camera. While we're waiting for people to trickle in, you can put your name and where you're from and any group affiliations that you might belong to. If you'd like, just go ahead and put that in the chat. And we'll just let people stream in for a couple more minutes and then we'll get started.
Indivisible.
Hi, Colleen.
Almost 80 people on already.
Oh,
80.
sure,
80.
but I'm on another webinar right now.
So I'm going to mute all.
Great. Okay. I'm going to, well, whatever.
Good evening, everybody. Go ahead and put your name and where you're from into the chat. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes. You're attending the Braver Angels skill building for disagreeing better. Our host is Dr. Chris Weldy. We are from Indivisible NWSOFA, along being joined by the crew from Braver Angels, Carl, Abe, and Duane. We're also live streaming to YouTube, so if you don't want your face on the screen, now is a good time to go ahead and shut off your camera.
Beth,
So thank you, everybody.
I shut off the camera because I don't need to be seen.
Yeah.
But
Beth, I am muting everybody. So for all the co-hosts, please unmute yourself. Great.
Thanks, Bill. Okay, I'm back. Good evening, everybody. I see a lot of people. We have California, Illinois, Metro Detroit, more Illinois people. Oh, Lou from Florida. Hello. We have Nashville, Tennessee, Wisconsin, New Jersey. It's so great to see everybody from all across the nation joining us tonight. We really appreciate you being here. And we'll just start in just another minute or two while people still continue to trickle in. Hi, Miss Ari. Ollie Olson from Buffalo, Minnesota, Wright County, Indivisible. Awesome. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, while we're waiting for everybody to come in, Laura just dropped the participant guide in the chat, just in case you didn't have a chance to grab that. I think it's only about 4 or 5 pages. So if you want to print it, we'll just have it available. All right, we are at 102 and close to the point where we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everybody. My name is Chris Weldy. I'm with the Northwest Suburbs Organizing for Action Indivisible group out of the Chicago suburbs. So I am actually based here in San Antonio, Texas. So this session is one of our Vision Forward initiatives. We have 4 different lines of effort. One is a learning lab that Kara, who I see is on the call, leads. Then we have a bridging series, which is the one you're on tonight, that we have partnered with Braver Angels out of Central Texas, which is the Braver Angels group that I am a member of myself. And then the other 2 areas are the truth sandwich, misinformation, and then the last one is our just messaging, our pro-democracy vision is kind of rounds out the Vision Forward 2.0 initiative. So what I'm going to do now is introduce Carl, who is the leader of the Central Texas Braver Angels group. He's based out of Austin. He is a retired lawyer, grew up in Massachusetts, and received his degree in economics from Princeton University. We actually have an economics group, Carl. Maybe one day we can get you together with the guys from our economics group. And then he received his law degree from University of Texas, Hook'em Horns. He is a longtime member of the Board of Communities in Schools in the Dallas region, which is a stay-in-school nonprofit that worked with at-risk students. As an educator myself, I greatly appreciate the work that you do with your nonprofit. He and his wife, Bonnie, have 2 children and 4 children and live in Austin, Texas. And I will be seeing Carl this weekend, right? Because we
Absolutely.
have an in-person event this, I think, Saturday, right? So that's exciting. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, Carl.
Okay, thanks so much, Chris. Thanks everybody for coming. I want to reiterate the importance of that participant guide before we get started. So if you have it hopefully handy, please do. We're going to be referring to it quite a bit through the course of the workshop. Also, let me just introduce the rest of the team that is going to be, and as you can see on your screen that the team basically has an asterisk at the front of their names. So you see mine is as a mod for moderator, and you see Chris is the troubleshooter. And what that means is that if anyone has technical difficulties and they get shut out and can't get back in, you can actually give Chris a phone call on her cell phone. And Chris, could you put your number in the chat? But you can jot this down yourself. 210-393-8147. You might want to have that on a separate piece of paper in case you get out and the chat doesn't help you very much. So again, 210-393-8147. Hopefully we won't need that. I'm going to ask the other folks that are on here to give a little bit about themselves. And let me start with Duane. Duane Reedus is going to be co-moderating. Actually, she's the lead moderator tonight. So Duane lives in Wimberley. And could you just say a couple words about your background, Duane?
Carl, how everyone? Yes, I did organizational development internationally for many years, and skills was a real part of what we did with organizations. So I'm real happy to be able to play in this world of bettering our skills. And I've been at Wimberley for 25 years. Thanks for having me tonight.
Thanks, Duane. Not on the screen, but I think he can come on the screen, is Abe Dana. Abe is going to be our breakout room manager, and he will be in the course of the workshop. We have several breakouts, and so he'll be putting you into the breakout rooms. He will try as best he can to keep you all in the same breakout rooms throughout. But if any of you have to leave early, you might let Abe know so he can rearrange things. So that's Abe. And then we also have Laura. Laura, is it Gabler or Gabler? Gabler.
It is Gabler. You got it right. Thank you.
Everyone knows you already, right, Laura?
Oh, I don't know if everybody does, but yeah, I've been with NWSOFA since May of 2025.
Cool. And Laura is going to be periodically putting information into the chat for you to refer to as we need to do that. I think we've got you all know how to use Zoom, and the Zoom kind of courtesy rules. You'll be muted, and then as we go through the session, if you need to, or we'll ask people to contribute. So at that time, you just unmute yourself. We'll call on you, raise your hand, or use the raise hand button. That would be better. And we can call on you. I think that that's about it for the preliminaries. I'm going to turn it over to Duane to start, and Duane, I'm going to try and successfully share my screen. Let's see what happens.
All right. So welcome everyone. You're on. So you're going to do the first 6 slides, right, Carl? Are you done?
No, you're oh, I can do these. Do you?
Oh, I thought on ours anyway. Here we go.
We're on 7.
Okay, so first we're going to start with what we're trying to accomplish here tonight. So the goals of this workshop are, first of all, to gain more understanding of the values and concerns of people who differ from you politically. And then we're going to develop our skills for listening in a way that the other person actually feels heard. And lastly, we're going to just share your perspectives in a way that the other person might hear you, even if they disagree. So this is about being gentle with each other, but really tuning in. And our agenda then is, first of all, we're going to go over the ground rules and expectations to abandon, things to let go of. We're going to have some introductions and we're going to plunge into the basic skills. We'll have a practice and a wrap up. So first, we're going to start with the ground rules. So we're here to talk about our skills. We're not going to get into policy debates tonight. We're going to talk about skills, not policies. And we're really going to help each other as we work on our skills. This is not about competition. It's about really honing our skills. So is everyone okay with these ground rules? Okay.
No dissents. No dissents.
Okay. So first, we'll start. Okay, so I'm turning so here's some expectations we want to let go of. When it comes to communicating with people who disagree with you, we want to understand that we're not here to persuade the other person that they're wrong and you're right. None of us are perfect. And instead, we're here to hope that you can present yourself in a way that they might actually see you as reasonable or at least willing to listen. And then we want the other person to, maybe some of these people will not have the same skill level you do. So just be gentle and expect that sometimes you might have to do the heavier lifting. Okay, so we're not here to persuade. The next slide. We're just here to use our skills and keep sharing. Okay. So we're going to give you some instructions about why you're here. So we're going to have our breakout manager divide you up into your groups. And in a minute, I just want you to understand what's going to happen. You'll be in a room and you'll be in the same room every time we have a breakout. So we really hope that you will stay throughout the workshop so that everyone gets their full experience of how to practice these skills. And also note that the names of the people in the room may not, just in case you get disconnected, you want to be able to tell the breakout room manager who you were with. You don't need to do anything to come in and out of the rooms. That will happen automatically. And so don't press any leave buttons, just stay put. So when you get in your room, whoever has the alphabetically name with an A or the first letter of the alphabet will start sharing. And then the next person. We're going to have 4 minutes, and what we want you to do is share why you came, your name, and what was important to you about why you came tonight. So we're ready to go into the breakout rooms. We're going to have 4 minutes, and someone will give you a time when it's near the end. So let's go into our breakout rooms. Yes, Colin?
Is the information in the chat about?
It will stay in the chat about, the question is just what's your name and why did you choose to come tonight?
Are we ready?
We're ready.
Okay, just so you know, all of you, as you go into your breakout room, Zoom will very briefly flash a room number. Would be a good idea for you to remember that new room number, so if you get disconnected, you can tell me what that number is. With this many people, it will be difficult to tell whether people who show up in the waiting room were here before or came late.
Yeah. Well, what we're going to do on this is, if anyone comes in now, we'll see them, right?
Yeah, like somebody is just showed up. Two
Yeah.
people just showed up.
That's fine. We're going to bring them in. We're going to keep bringing people in until we get to the end of the sharing. So
It looks like we have one person, C-Web. This happens sometimes. She's kind of stuck.
okay.
Zoom is trying to send her into the breakout room, but she's, for whatever reason, shaky internet connection or what.
Are there any other people, Abe, beside her that are?
Yeah, there's James, Bridge, and Virginia. These people were in the waiting room, so I don't think they were in breakout rooms.
Okay. James and Virginia, can you put your camera on so we could just chat with you for a second? Hi, Virginia. We just want to tell you what's happened so far. And you'll be able to participate, but we've set up some breakout rooms. People are in the breakout rooms now in the first exercise of this. The workshop is Skills for Disagreeing Better. And the question that they are talking about in their breakouts now is, what brought you here? What was curious? What were you curious about enough to, to want to come and participate in the workshop? And so, why don't we just see what you think? You can, Virginia, any ideas? Do you want to unmute yourself?
I don't think she can. I think you have to unmute her.
No, we can't unmute anybody. All we can do is send a prompt.
Oh, who's the
I've sent her
host?
a couple. Even a host can't unmute someone. All you can do is send prompts. She's
Yeah,
unmuted now.
I'm unmuted.
Okay.
There she is.
Yeah. So once again, you're asking me why I chose to be part of this.
Yeah, why do you decided to come tonight?
Well, I think it's always a good thing to keep an open mind to learn about, especially nowadays.
Yeah. Great.
Like to get lots of people's perspective.
They're about to come back.
Okay. All right, James, we didn't have a chance to hear you why you came tonight. But we're going to share from the breakout rooms. That was the first exercise for everybody. And so now you know kind of what was going on. You're caught up and you can participate from this point forward.
You want us to stop letting people in now?
I think we can let them in right after after we do this sharing. I mean, stop. You can keep them coming in for now, okay? I'll tell you when to stop.
Gotcha.
All right, Joanne, is everyone back in?
Okay, you'll have to stop.
Yes, they're back.
Okay.
I can't see the people, so. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
hold
see
on.
the screen.
Stop.
There
Here we go.
So I'm real curious about what your answers were, about who would like to share why they showed up tonight. I see John with a hand raised. Well, start with you. Unmute yourself, please. John Ivins. Right. Are you unmuted?
He's looking for the magic button. Doesn't seem to be.
Okay.
There, no.
Okay. Who else has a hand up? I can't see everybody, Carl. Just name your name.
Joseph Dragon. Joseph, can you unmute yourself and?
We'll go back to David after.
And
Joseph.
John is, neither of them are able to.
So I unmuted myself.
Oh, here we go. Okay, Joe, go ahead.
If you hit it again, it mutes me again. So just want you to know that in our group, we had two teachers and we both had the same experience, which is that as teachers, we spend our whole lives telling people things. And even when we get to talk to adults that we don't need to tell things to anymore, we have a tendency to keep telling them. So we need to learn different ways of communicating other than the didactic way that we spend our time in the classroom.
Awesome. Awesome. How about John Givens? Are you unmuted now?
John, does it work for you? Or
yes.
There you go. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay, mic check.
We hear you.
Okay. I was let in. You put me in a room alone. No one else was there.
So we all get to hear. We all get to hear from you why you came, why you chose to come.
Okay, well, I've on occasion from time to time, I will get into a rant about online technology and information or artificial intelligence. I have different words for it, but
Okay, so why did you choose to come
I just like to point out that I can't learn how to disagree effectively if I'm muted or if I'm put in a room alone.
Awesome. We'll get you in a breakout room with someone next go around.
Okay. I'm talking to you from Decatur, Illinois. I'm a retired psychology professor and a member of Veterans for Peace. And I very much like to stay active in my retirement in peace education and peace activism.
Thank you for your service. Thank you. All right, Mary, you unmute.
Yeah, hi. So my partner and I both were coming from the same perspective of previously we're here because when we try to talk to somebody who comes at things very differently from us, we have a tendency to just walk away. And I think across our nation, that's what we've all been doing. It's not getting us very far. So I think we all really would benefit from learning how to handle that differently.
Thank
So
you for showing
that's why
up.
we're here.
Thank you so much. Okay, Graham?
Which one I would join because I like to learn new French every day.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you. Okay, any other hands you see, Carl?
Yes, I see Richard Grimm.
We
Well,
just
he
we
just
just
he
did
just spoke.
Richard.
He just
Oh,
spoke.
Carolyn McCurry.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I forget. Oh, room 27, we had one person that couldn't unmute, or what she put in the chat was it's not working. So I'm thinking that was unmute didn't work.
So what's important to you about being here tonight?
Oh, I get really scared and nervous to talk to people. It's really like a traumatic experience to make the 5 calls, and so maybe if I get so that I can talk, I might get really mad, but I don't know because I usually don't say much.
Well, you're in the
Probably
right place to get skills. Yes.
Probably time, Duane, for one more.
Okay,
I
let's
see
do Harriet. Harriet?
David Shove. Shove.
Hello. I'm just here. I want to learn anything I can. The more stuff in my toolbox, the better.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, Carl, let's move on. Learn about lap skills.
Yeah, let me just make a mention. There are a lot of different workshops, and the timing is regulated so that we can fit the workshop into the time frame, so that you don't. We're not here till midnight, and no one wants that. And so there's such great enthusiasm to participate. We love that, but we have to regulate the time so not everyone can have a chance to speak on every single thing. So hopefully you'll bear with us. So we're going to go on, and let me
Hey, Carl, just one quick announcement. Several people talked about not having sound in their breakout rooms. It could be that, so when you go to your breakout room, you need to just unmute yourself. I know in Coffee and Conversation and with some of our groups, you're used to the moderator asking you to unmute. So that's the only thing I can think of, is that you just, when you get to your breakout rooms, unmute yourself if you would like to talk.
Thanks, Chris.
Okay, so now we're going to focus on what Braver Angels has called the lap skills. And this is about 4 key skills. It's about listening, and that means to listen carefully. And then we're going to talk about, and that means to turn off your inner debater, that voice in your head, and don't prepare your response. Just sit and listen, connect with the person, and be ready to paraphrase or just test out what you heard the person say. And this is about focusing on the other person's viewpoint and their underlying concerns. So the whole thing about listening is we want to listen for something to agree with, if possible. So listen for agreement. The second skill is to acknowledge.
Oh,
and when we acknowledge, it's okay.
Getting ahead of you, sorry.
Okay, is to acknowledge. And oh, I see. You're okay. There we go. Look for agreements now. So we're going to listen. We're going to acknowledge. We're going to, before we give our perspective, we have some skill building to do. So we really want to acknowledge, and then we're going to learn a skill called pivoting. And lastly, we're going to be able to give our perspective in a way that others can hear us. So that's what we're going to be doing tonight. Okay, next slide.
Or now you're going to drill down a little bit on the listening.
Right. What is really hard about listening in this way is how do we listen for people who disagree with us politically? So it's really important that we share our how we differ, but we're going to spend some time. So if you want to raise your hand, are we going to spend more time on this, Carl, or do we need to move on?
No, we're going to go through what the listening skills are, right?
Okay, so this next activity will expose you to some core conservative and some liberal values and concerns that underlie many specific policy ideas. So the goal here is to help you listen, not just to the content. For example, if they approve or they disapprove about a policy, but listen for what's important to them and their concerns, the whys and the worries. How did they come up with the viewpoint they have? One reason we're polarized in this country is that many of us do not understand how people we know come to their views and why they support particular candidates. So we just make up our own ideas on why they hold certain positions. And guess what? It's often very far from how they see themselves. So if we're going to understand one another better, we can learn to disagree better. And often that means we'll find some common grounds. So we've developed
Duane, excuse me, I kind of messed up, so I will take full responsibility here. After Duane had talked about the listening skill as the first one in the lap skills, and she went through, how hard that is, and you turn off your inner debater. I don't know if you're the same as me, but if someone starts talking and it's something I disagree with, I very often begin to formulate my rebuttal points. And I stop listening because I'm more interested, or I'm more actively thinking about how to, have a chance to rebut those points. And so that's really hard. So what we want to do with the listening skills is, number one, turn that off. Think about being able to really listen to understand so that you can actually summarize what that individual said. That helps to turn off the rebuttal, instinct. Focusing on the other person's viewpoints. And as Duane said, trying to understand or see if there's anything you can agree with them on, maybe a high level principle. And so the question, and just we'll take a couple minutes for this, and this is what Duane, you were asking me for, and I said I was doing some other things with the slide, so I apologize. But why is it important, and why is it difficult for you all to, or any of us, to listen? And we'll just take a couple of raised hands, just a couple of minutes on this. I see Harriet.
And Beth, Harriet, and then Beth. And then maybe Bridget.
Harriet, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I think oftentimes, just what you said, we're formulating what we want to say, or adding agreement to it if we agree, or thinking about rebuttal. So.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, unmute.
Hi. Well, I currently go to a group every 2 weeks with a lot of MAGAs, and I find it very hard to have kind of a meeting of the minds, or try to get that far, because so many of them have what I would call noxious views, like racism. And so it's a real turnoff to me. And I tend to either try to, talk them out of it, or I just shut down. So I'm hoping that I will learn some ways of dealing with that, if there is a way of dealing with it.
You're in the right place.
I think Beth.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know where there's my camera. I tend to get, if it's someone I disagree with, I tend to let my emotions get in the way of my logical thinking. And so I don't do a real good job of thinking about or finding it common areas. Usually it's the first thing that's not common. It sort of sets me off.
Bridget?
Yeah. I think that after listening, or as you're listening, it's really important to acknowledge if you found a kernel or something that they said that you can use as an affirmation, that you have a similar viewpoint. For example, it might be, of those who are being put in jail and without any process. Could be just something that you can hook on to. I think that's very important in listening. And before I give my perspective or another way of thinking about the same thing.
Great. And last person, Joseph?
So I think that the importance of listening is to make a connection with the other person, so that you are not, even if you don't win the argument, you at least see the other person as a human being as opposed to an enemy. So that's the importance to me of listening.
Great, thanks. Joanne, I'll put the slides back up.
Okay. So the next activity is going to expose you to some core conservative and liberal values and concerns that underlie a lot of our policy ideas. And so the goal here is going to be to listen, not let the content get in your way, whether they approve or disapprove of a certain policy, but listen for what's important, what they're concerned about, what they're worried about, what's behind their views. One reason we get so polarized is we simply do not understand that people come from different backgrounds, different family situations, and we don't know how they came upon those views. So it's far that we make it up, and then we think we know and we don't. But we're going to learn that we can disagree better and find common ground. So Braver Angels has developed a list of values and concerns of both conservatives and liberals. And these lists are not perfect, they're not complete. They may be phrased in ways that aren't your words, but they have been vetted by both Reds and Blues in our Braver Angels. So with good faith efforts, we're trying to capture some core values and concerns of conservatives and liberals. So you can read these lists in page 2 of your participant guide. And I encourage you just to let go of that inner critic, that voice in your head, as you read and listen to. Carl and I are going to read these out loud. In other words, just be generous rather than thinking I'm going to argue about that. Neither side owns values and concerns on their list. So we're just going to listen for agreement. And after we go through the list, we're going to ask you to do one of two things. You can either look at one of the lists and identify some of the values and concerns on the other side's list that maybe will help you better understand where they're coming from. Or you can ask yourself which of the other side's values and concerns you might agree with. even if you don't agree with their policies. So we're going to move on and Carl's going to read the conservative core values.
Right. So there are 5 conservative core values and 5 conservative concerns. I'll go through those lists, and then Joanne will do the same thing on the progressive side. But the core values that came out of all the workshops and the input within Braver Angels was individual freedom and personal responsibility, free market capitalism as an engine of human progress, patriotism, enthusiastic love of country, social values of religion, family, and respect for tradition, and local initiative and local charity. Those are the core values that conservatives had. The major concerns were grouping people into identity categories that compromise their individuality. So lumping them into a particular group without any nuances. Government expansion, such as overregulation and excessive taxation that limits the freedom of individuals and businesses to make their own choices. Skepticism about the ability of government to manage complex programs. Suspicion of utopian promises and caution about social engineering as coming with many unintended consequences. So they may be good, well-intended, but they come with unintended consequences. And then a core concern is being immediately labeled with an ism or a phobia when expressing views on public policy and cultural issues, such as homophobic, racist, etc. So you can refer, as Joanne said, to the page 2 of the participant guide to keep these in front of you. But now Joanne is going to go through the more liberal values.
And Carl, if you'll just click as I read them off. So there are 5 liberal values, and they may vary because everything's on a continuum. From, you can move a little bit either way, towards more moderate or more progressive. But the core values are 1, inclusiveness, especially for those on the margins. Diversity, the value of human difference. A level playing field for people who have been denied opportunities. An active government to help those in need, sustain a healthy environment and ensure fairness. And finally, a safe social environments, which include attention to language. And then the concerns are abuses of free market capitalism that lead to exploitation and inequality, ignoring historical forces of injustice that are still present, patriotism that is not balanced with criticism, groups who are left out of social progress, or being immediately labeled with terms such as woke and big government liberal when presenting views on public policy and cultural issues. So now we're going to ask you to reflect on this question. If I were to listen with understanding to the core values and concerns of those people who differ from me politically, remember, we're going to ask you just to reflect. We're going to give you a little time. And remember, if you disagree with a belief statement from the opposite side, if you understand better, you can communicate more effectively. So here's an example of a liberal who favors affirmative action and has listened carefully to understand the other side. Conservatives' concern about affirmative action policies is often connected to their emphasis on treating people as individuals and not as members of groups. Even conservatives who would personally benefit from affirmative action tend to see it as violating a key principle. So the task here, we're not analyzing or critiquing, but just ask yourself, if I really understand the influence of these values and concerns, how might I be better able to communicate with people in the world who are different from me politically? It's really about me listening and understanding. So try to identify one or two values and concerns on the other side's list that might help you understand their viewpoint better, even if you don't agree with it. And then reflect on how knowing this can help you better understand and communicate with someone who differs from you. Or another approach you might just take is to focus on the values and concerns of the other side that you agree with. I'm often surprised at what agreement there is when we look at the other person's list to understand. So again, this is page 2 in your guide, and you might want to circle or just write what stands out to you. And in a few minutes, we're going to take a couple of minutes for you to reflect. Then we're going to go back to your breakout groups, and you're going to get to understand this. So we're going to start 2 minutes of self-reflection before you are put back into your group. Okay. Before we go back into our groups, just we're going to have this is what we want you to do. And these instructions are going to be in the chat, by the way. And if you're in a room by yourself, raise your hand and someone will attend to that. But time's going to go quickly. And what we want you to ask is, what did you notice about the other side that you agreed with, or something that you noticed that you might understand differently? So time is going to go quickly. Just raise your hand if you have a problem in your breakout group. And we're going to have 5 minutes for your breakout group. So make sure everyone shares and start with a different person this time. So we'll go back into the breakout groups, please.
Breakouts are very volatile. There's a lot of people coming and going. So people are going to have to see some new people. I checked the breakout assignment of that guy who said he was alone, and he was in a room of 3 people. So I don't know why he felt like he was alone. But there's some weird, in the comments, people saying they can't unmute or what. I don't know. I wonder if people don't know how to unmute or don't know that they need to unmute.
Maybe had their camera off.
And we certainly can stop letting people in now that come into the waiting room, unless you recognize the name.
Okay.
It's interesting to look at the chat because we don't usually leave it on.
I know.
I don't know, Carl, how you feel, but there's a lot of people I think I'm making a good point, which is the way we are describing conservative doesn't correspond to today's MAGA. And I think that needs to be updated somehow.
One of the things that Mari was talking about is using things on more of a continuum. So if it's on far right or far left, then we make some distinctions about that.
Well, I know sometimes when we talk, we say, the old Republicans versus MAGA. They're like this.
Yeah, because to me, I wish we still had politics of liberals and conservatives, but I don't know where they are. What we have, we don't have liberals anymore. We have progressives, and we don't have conservatives anymore. We have populists. At least that's the way I look at it. I wish we still had Bill Clinton and George H.W., but they're dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking into this just in terms of percentages, and the GOP breaks down to like 23% MAGA or populist right, 23% is what they call faith and flag conservatives, 18% about ambivalent right, ambivalent, did I say that right? And then committed conservatives 15%, and then stress sideliners 15%. So
It's interesting. It seems like the core values still fit. Maybe it's the concerns, the key concerns would be, one of the key concerns would focus on immigration. And that's kind of the big thing that's missing in all of this.
I guess I really have a hard time seeing that with MAGA because, the Republicans used to stand for the private sector running the economy. But under MAGA, the government runs the economy with tariffs and all sorts of, public ownership of private companies. I mean, they used to stand for low taxes, but what are tariffs other than taxes? So they used to stand for states' rights, but they're not happy with states' rights anymore.
Only in certain circumstances.
So, yeah, I mean, to me, especially MAGA has just flipped everything from the Reaganite philosophy upside down.
And then who is even the fiscally conservative party? I mean, we've added huge deficits because of the number, the amount of tax breaks. So that's a conversation I've had with some of my relatives, saying who is the fiscally conservative party anymore? So
Yeah, that's absolutely right, because we're running $2 trillion annual deficits as far as the eye can see, and that's been going on for, the national debt in 2000 was 6 trillion, and now it's like close to 40. Okay,
are we
here they
bringing
come.
people back in? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, we're coming back in. Are we back? Okay, we want to hear some responses to the question, how might understanding some of these values and concerns of other people help you listen better? So we're going to take a few of you who haven't spoken yet and hear what you have to say. So just raise your hand.
I see Peter first and then Gordon next.
So I consider myself a liberal, but I see that I can agree with a lot, probably all of the core values, but with additional things that I would want to say about each of them. And just to give you an example, individual freedom and personal responsibility, they certainly have to go together. And one's freedom, feeling of what they can do to be free, shouldn't impinge on the freedom of anyone else to a large degree. And individual freedom without a level playing field is not much freedom for the people that don't have opportunity.
Thank you.
Gordon and then Elizabeth.
Yeah, my comment is probably fairly parallel. I mean, that in the list of core concerns on the conservative side, I can relate to probably almost all of them, that those are valid concerns. But then I can also give an asterisk and say, okay, well, but either it's not that bad of a risk on each of these, or that yeah, it's a concern, but what you get in exchange is so much better. So, but on the underlying thing about like, are these concerns? Yes, I agree, they're all concerns.
That's an
Elizabeth?
acknowledgement.
Yes, our group was adjusting the conservative values and concerns. And what also happened within the group was one of our members didn't know what affirmative action was. So we needed to explain it. And another member of the group felt that before a discussion of identifying their conservative values and concerns, we had to know how they felt about affirmative action. But as you know, we had to spend some of the majority of time explaining affirmative action to our member of the group.
Teresa and then Ed.
I was, like some of you have mentioned, I was thinking, oh, I agree with this. And it occurred to me, love of country. I thought of the halftime show that many people watched this weekend as a love of, an expression of love of your traditions and family and country kind of thing. And I thought this might be a place of common ground, saying to them, what do you imagine when you hear love of country? Is there a particular memory you have that you could share? And begin to build a sense of we have this in common. And we may, talk about it in a different language, but this is something we share. So that's my thought. Thank you.
Two more, I think, is what we can do. So that I see Ed and Dorothy.
Hi, I'm Ed. So one of the things that we were struggling with a bit in our group was that we didn't have any major issues around the conservative values because those things have been around for a while. But what we're seeing now aren't conservative values. What we're seeing now is authoritarian fascist values versus democratic values. And so for me, it's not so much how can I talk to people who have a disagreement about a particular policy and where we should spend our money versus the lying and the meanness and the cruelty that seem to be embraced by so many people or overlooked maybe because even people who I used to be friends with, we don't actually get into the discussions about, well, is it okay for people to be killed on the street for people protesting? But how can you accept that as a conservative value? And so I'm at a loss. And so I was hoping to learn a better way to kind of express myself around people like that, because I don't think it's just like, which group gets the most money as much as it is like, what about basic human principles? What happened? And why is that okay? And why isn't that more important than, how much money you're making? Sorry. You can see I can't control myself too well.
Dorothy, last word on this one. Can you unmute yourself? Sorry. Dorothy, you're muted. Just hit it one. There you go.
There. Okay. Sorry. Yeah, I had an experience that just this week of talking with a very conservative person, and her concern about what was going on was she said, I'm really concerned about all that rioting that's happening in Minnesota. And we started our conversation about that. And she finally came around to realize that she was looking at it through certain news programs, probably. But then she began to realize that no, the people really weren't rioting; they were protesting. They were angry about something, but not being violent. And then, but I finally got her to. We got around to the point that we both agreed that we love our country, and that we want the best for the country. So we worked on that value and came to some agreements.
Dorothy, we can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe you better call on someone else if my phone is not.
No, it's good. You're fine. Go ahead and finish up. Oh.
I don't know what did you hear?
I think we heard it up through the point where you agreed that you had both had love for your country.
Yes, that was where we finally found a value that we had in common.
Yeah.
And then from there, we could talk about our love of children, that we had a common love for the welfare of children.
Okay, great. Thank you, Dorothy.
And that was something that helped us to communicate.
So to me, we're gonna go on to the next part of the workshop, and I'll be leading the moderating on that. But before we leave this, I think Dorothy's description of her conversation is a fantastic example of working through a really, really difficult issue with strong, appropriate emotions attached to it, and finding a way, even with that, to find a couple of core values and the idea of that they could agree on, right? And that's what forms the basis for continuing dialogue, continuing discussion. Dorothy, it seems to me that you would be willing to have another discussion at a later date with the person that you had, because that one turned out to be a constructive and productive one, versus one that just goes off the rails and you just have to exit, and you may not even feel like you ever want to talk to that person again. And what we're trying to do with this particular workshop is introduce skills that you can use to try to have an outcome like Dorothy successfully did. And that's what we're going to turn to now in the next part of the exercise. And it's really hard right now because of the things that are going on, and I totally understand that. What we're going to ask you to do is not so much, we're going to give you a scenario, and it's not going to be the scenario that is right in front of everyone's mind right now, but it'll be a way to practice the skills that you can then hopefully apply to any scenario. Some may be much more difficult than others, okay? So we're going to go on to the next skill, and that's the acknowledgement skill. And I don't know about you, but a lot of political conversations that I've come across, and this follows along with you in the participant guide, is a lot of political conversations go this way. You say up, I say down. You say hot, I say cold. You say my candidate is absolutely horrible, and I say yours is worse. Your policies are going to ruin the country, and no, yours are even worse. So before we can have a discussion, when that's kind of the way things have generally gone, is to try to connect first before you disagree. Or at some point in the conversation, as Dorothy kind of outlined, there was disagreement clearly at the beginning, but she found a way to connect and make that a productive conversation. But ideally, rather than starting with a counter argument, your perspective as pushing back immediately, it's important to acknowledge that you've actually heard the other person, heard what they said. I hear you on this. I get this is an issue that's really important to you. The acknowledgement can be about the content of what someone has said, or it can be about the intensity. I feel this is, really, you feel very strongly about this, or both. But a brief paraphrase of the person's view goes a long way for them to feel that they've been heard. So, for example, for you, this issue is about personal responsibility and not something the government should get involved in. Or if I understand you right, this is a public health and safety issue that the government has a responsibility to regulate. Did I get that right? So this concept of trying to first use those very important listening skills to then be able to come back with a paraphrase and an acknowledgement is the next step of here. So remember, our lap skills are listen, acknowledge, and that's what we're on right now. So at this point, I want to just ask you all to give some feedback. What are the advantages of acknowledging first before sharing a perspective where you disagree? Anyone? What's the benefit of an acknowledgement statement or a paraphrase of what you've heard? Lou and then Teresa. Lou?
Yeah, I think it's bonding as humans. I hear you, I respect you, so I think it's starting from we're humans together, kind of getting at that level.
Yeah, great. Teresa, then Ed?
I agree. I think if you put yourself in the position of the other person and they repeat back to you what you've said, you realize that they've heard you, and that makes them more open to continuing the conversation rather than planning their next attack. So
Great. Thanks, Teresa. Ed, and then Kathy.
Well, a long time ago, I took this class from Stephen Covey called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one of the habits was seek first to understand, then to be understood. I think it's speaking directly to this point. I think, too, it shows that you are at least trying to find a common ground where you can take a conversation. And you can't do that if you're in combat mode. You can only do that if you can find something reasonable within what they said that you can sort of let them hear that you understood what they said and maybe even find a point of agreement. Yeah, that's all.
Great. Thanks, Ed. Kathy, last one.
Yes, I'm kind of in agreement with what's been said, but what I notice is that even their body language and my own body language, we can all relax a little bit and take a deep breath after we acknowledge, that we are hearing what this person is saying and that we are interested in learning more. I just noticed that people you can just see them kind of relaxing and their shoulders kind of, and the defensive face relaxes. And I think it's a good way then that each of us can start learning from each other. So it's like opens doors.
Yeah, thanks. I kind of think of it as if I'm the person who is, say, coming out with a pretty strong statement, and the listener listens and paraphrases and captures what I've said, my blood pressure drops. It just, the whole atmosphere of the conversation becomes more conducive to one, as opposed to, I think one of you said, as opposed to, continuing your combat skills or your combat instincts. And that's what is going to help to give a framework for this conversation ultimately to be more productive. And it's also going to give the greater possibility for you to be heard when you offer up a counter perspective. So it really sets the table for that beautifully. Okay. So we're going to now practice an acknowledgement. So this is where we need to get your pens and pencils out and the participant guide, have that handy, because there are a couple of prompts. One is a conservative prompt, you could say a conservative rant, and the other is a more liberal prompt. And the issue that we're talking about is the size and scope of government. So that'll be the scenario. And we'll read the prompts. We want you to listen to them and pick the one that is farthest from your own viewpoint, or pick whichever one you want that you feel comfortable with, and write down an acknowledgement statement. 1 or 2 sentences. Pick something in the prompt that you can respond to, that you can paraphrase, and that if you can find something to agree with, great. But at a minimum, what is an acknowledgement statement? So the person who is talking first in this feels heard, feels all the kind of things that you all just said. I'm going to read this one, and then Duane is going to read the more liberal one. But here's the conservative one. So if you generally, this is farthest from your view, pay close attention, listen, because this will be the one that you want to write an acknowledgement statement. I think the size and scope of government have gotten way out of control. Government has ballooned into a bloated, power-hungry force, micromanaging our lives and draining our wallets. We're all drowning in taxes and regulations, and too many people have traded self-governance for reliance on handouts, expecting bureaucrats to solve their problems instead of taking personal responsibility. Now, don't get me wrong, the government does have a role in maintaining infrastructure, law and order, and providing for those truly incapable of helping themselves. But we've crossed the line into full-blown nanny state territory. And people like you seem to believe that for every challenge in life, the answer is more government. Can't you see that your obsession with government's help is strangling the American experiment in self-governance by turning engaged citizens into lazy dependents? That's a pretty good rant. Okay.
Okay, here's the liberal prompt that you might choose. It's on page 4 in your guide. I believe the government should ensure fairness and opportunity for all, not just the privileged few. That means investing in education, healthcare, and social programs that give everyone a fighting chance. Taxes and regulations aren't punishments. They're the price we pay for a civilized society. Of course, government must be efficient and accountable, and government programs sometimes have unintended effects. But right now, the main problem is unchecked corporate power that rigs the system for the wealthy while leaving ordinary Americans behind. Yet people like you act as if government oversight's tyranny is tyranny while turning a blind eye to corporate greed. Can't you see that without a government strong enough to manage the playing field, we're living in a ruthless free-for-all where only the rich and powerful survive?
Okay. So what we'd like you to do now is take a minute or two and write out, choose which one of those statements you want to have a conversation with that person, and write out your acknowledgement statement. You don't have to address every single issue. There's no way. Those are very long statements. But find something in there that you can acknowledge. And if you can find something you can agree with, go ahead. 2 sentences at most. Write it word for word right now. We're going to give you 2 minutes to do that. Then we're going to put you in your great breakout rooms, and we're going to ask you to read your acknowledgement statement to the other folks in your room and share it and get internal feedback from others in your breakout group. So go ahead and word for word write out your acknowledgement.
Can you repost those statements?
I can, well, they're in the participant guide, but I can post them. I'm going to post the, let's see. There's the conservative
I found it. Never.
Carl, she said she was able to find it.
Okay. About another minute. Okay. Abe is going to put you back into your breakout groups. You'll have about only 3 minutes in this, okay? So just read your statement and share, and give each other comments, and then we'll come back and we'll share a few and we'll discuss them. So, Abe, if you're ready, off you go.
I have found that this acknowledgement trips some people up because they don't get that it doesn't mean agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and actually, that was feedback that I gave Carl with another Braver Angels session that we did, not with that Carl's team moderated, but another group moderated. It was another team, and both people from our group that went to that session had that impression that they needed to agree versus just acknowledge and reflect back on what the person said.
Yeah, I'll make that clear. I'm glad you both raised that.
And then this was my cheating way, as if I was going to do this, I was gonna say, there's a sentence in here that says, now don't get me wrong, the government has a role in maintaining infrastructure, law and order, and providing for those truly incapable of helping themselves. So I was going to say, yeah, what I hear you saying is that, but I think that was cheating. And what I should have actually, I would have gone out of, I probably should have done something about the government spending being somewhat out of control, but my gut feeling, or what I really wanted to fill out, was the sentence that I just gave you.
Let's see if someone comes up with that. That'll be fun.
One thing I like to say to people is these are lap skills. You may have to lap around a few times.
Yeah. I actually find the model fairly intuitive and relatively easy to remember, because listen and acknowledge come somewhat, easily to me. And then the pivot makes sense, right? To get kind of permission to, share your perspective. And of course, your goal is often to share it. We have another one of our colleagues that's teaching a similar workshop, but hers is called What I Wish I Would Have Said. And
Here they come.
Oh, okay. We'll finish later.
Well, you still have about 20 seconds, actually.
Yeah, I was going to say, so hers, it talks about asking questions after the listen, acknowledge, and reflect back steps. And that comes harder to me. So.
Okay, welcome back. Well, I saw someone laughing and smiling, so it couldn't have been that bad. I want to make a point because this is important. When I said, acknowledge something, paraphrase, and if you can find something to agree with, do that too. The purpose or the focus of acknowledgement is different from agreement, okay? So you don't have to, if you couldn't find something to agree with in all of that, fine. If you can, great, but recognize you're not agreeing to the entire statement. You're just trying to find you're trying to, the most important thing is to do the acknowledgement part of that. With that having been said later than earlier, who would like to share one of their acknowledgement statements? Okay, I'm gonna go with Amanda first and come in that direction. Amanda, then Sandra, and then Peter, okay? Go ahead, Amanda.
Okay. So with the conservatives, it was kind of a rant and a ramble. So I just focused on the first thing that they said, and my response would be, I hear you say that we need less government oversight. Am I right? And to that, I can agree. It does seem like we have less control over our own lives.
Okay. Okay. And remember, someone said this earlier when I think we were talking about the listening skill more in general. Body language is really important and tone of voice is really important because the goal is to set the stage, set the table for that more conducive environment to have a constructive conversation. Okay. Thanks, Amanda. Sandra?
Hi. Took me a little bit to get started because these are big statements, and I thought probably we're supposed to have two statements, but I got one each. On the conservative prompt, I said, I hear you saying that government does too much for people. And then on the liberal prompt, I said, I hear you saying that corporate power is too big and that government needs to have more oversight. And the interesting thing in our group, which was amazing tonight, was that we all three seemed to come up with the same thing. That doesn't happen very often. That does not happen.
You are fucking invisible.
Okay. Thanks, Sandra. Peter?
So I found I could say, I agree that parts of the government have become bloated and power hungry, and some parts have too many regulations that get in the way of progress. If I was asked to give examples, they might be ones that a conservative might not have thought of and might not agree with.
Okay. So that's a good one for a little bit of feedback on. The concept again is you're trying to lower the blood pressure of the speaker. If I'm the speaker and I hear, well, I can agree with you on that parts of this are that and parts of this can be done. That has not really reduced my blood pressure enough. Right? And so it may be better to not even agree in this case, because I think maybe I forced you to think more about agreement and just do an acknowledgement. I hear you that you believe that this is, government's too big, too intrusive, and that really bothers you. Have I got that right? That would be shifting a little bit. So that's kind of what I would say. Remember, the goal is a long-term goal in the course of this, and this is step two of 4. Elizabeth, and then Kathy.
Okay. This is what I think about acknowledgement. I think what you're saying, this is conservative prompt. I think what you're saying is that Americans are too dependent on the government solving their problems instead of taking individual responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you can say, I think this is what you're saying, or
Yeah.
I hear that this is what you're concerned about. Yeah, either of those. Great. Martha?
My is kind of based on something that I began to formulate in order to talk to a close relative. And if this is about the conservative prompt. And I'm saying, you say that, sorry, let me read it.
Yeah.
I can see that you've lived your life taking a lot of responsibility for everything, and I admire all that you've accomplished without having to rely on any government services. And that's how I would start the conversation.
Okay. And you would just end it there.
I would probably be entering the next phase if I said the next thing I was going to say.
Right, right. So this is what's really hard, because you in this one you're trying to simply do the acknowledgement and not even kind of foreshadow that you're going to make the counter argument right at that point, right? And I was hanging on every word and waiting for that next sentence of however, or but, or I think this, right? And so it's a beautiful thing to do, to try and get some personalization in. And if I'm in the position of that conservative and you're saying, man, I understand that you've done this and this, and I can understand why you feel this way. Have I got that right? My blood pressure comes way, way down. You kind of, in a sense, you're baiting the hook, right? But you're really trying to make sure that I feel that I've been heard. And making it personal like that is really a great great technique, I think. One more. Kathy? Oh, sorry, you're muted. Here we go.
There we go. I think I didn't do a very good job on this one. So it's been good listening to everyone else. So the phrase that the government, this is the conservative one, is becoming more of a nanny state. I don't like that phrase, but anyway, so so it kind of irked me a little bit, but I started to say, okay, how can I be calm about this? And so I said, yes, I do understand your concern about our government becoming a nanny state, because there can be people who take advantage of government freebies, just like in every walk of life. But then I went on to kind of give them a point where I found it as more of an investment. The things that our government can give us, like food stamps, is really an investment in people. So I kind of went on to talk about and I wasn't supposed to do that, I think, huh?
No, you weren't.
Okay.
But the fact that you did it is perfect because we all learn with this, right? And we've had a couple where it kind of started to steer beyond the acknowledgement.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to just thank you wholeheartedly for what you did. Let's go on. We're going to do the next step, and then we'll talk about perspective. But an analogy that I love to use and probably overuse is I used to ride horses. And if you think about warming up a horse and then going through a process to getting the horse to finally let her rip, you start with a walk, and that is the listen. Then you go to a trot, and that is the acknowledge. Then you go to a canter, and that's going to be the next step we do, which is the pivot. And then finally, you can relax the reins enough to go to your perspective. But if you relax the reins too early in that process, bad things happen. That horse is going to go taking off like crazy, and no one's ready or warmed up if you do that at the acknowledgement stage. So it's really something to kind of put self-discipline on, right? In terms of slowly making sure you're just going through step by step. in order to ultimately achieve the goal, which we've talked about. So okay, I'm going to talk about the pivot. And this is one that never occurred to me in any kind of discussion, but it is what was developed by Bill Doherty, and I think a lot of therapists know this, but I certainly didn't. And it's the step that is trying to hold off on sharing your viewpoint, your actual perspective, but almost kind of given a transition. So it's something along the lines of you did your acknowledgement, and then you say, I was talking with someone the other day about this issue. Can I tell you what I learned from that? Or I've been reading up on this for a bit, this really interesting article. Can I share that with you? And you're kind of asking through that to share a different viewpoint or share a viewpoint without going into the substance of it, right? And so and then you're hoping to get, okay, yeah, that'd be okay. And think about this progression of blood pressure staying low. This is what really contributes to something like that. So in your participant guide, you can see, look for a verbal okay. Some examples are, can I offer my thoughts on this? This is something I've thought about a lot. Or can I offer a different way of looking at it? I know this is a hot topic. Can I share a couple of ideas I have? Any one of those kind of things. But now, we would like you to write your own short pivot statement. So I gave you a bunch of examples, but you can be far more creative than I am, and that the participant guide is. Come up with just one sentence as a pivot, and we're not going to do breakouts on this, but we're going to share. Okay, so I'll give you a minute or so to think of a pivot that would fit. When you are ready, some of you go ahead and you're willing to share, just let me know by raising your hand. We'll wait just another few seconds or so. Okay, Constance, want to share yours? You got to unmute again. Sorry. There you go.
But may I share my point of view with you on this topic and wait for them? I believe the American bureaucracy serves.
Well, hold on.
Gravity.
Just the pivot.
Oh, just that. Okay.
Yep.
I've got a whole paragraph that follows.
Yep. Hey, we are in the cantering stage. We have not opened it up for the gallop.
I gotcha.
Okay. So that was good of can I share my thoughts with you? Janet?
Yes. So I wrote, so I hear you say there are just way too many government regulations. We're micromanaged in a nanny state. Are there any regulations that you feel are necessary that you would agree with? I don't know if that's a pivot, but I'd like to know that we have something in common. So,
Yeah. So it's not a pivot.
okay.
It could come at some point of the conversation. Ideally, it would come maybe a little bit later when you get into you sharing your perspective, or it could come earlier on after an acknowledgement of just showing real curiosity, tell me more kind of type of thing. But as a pivot, it's getting too far ahead of ourselves if it's that you want to actually share, and it's maybe that would have been something you could have done in the acknowledgement, but we really weren't talking about trying to get the conversation going more in the acknowledgement stage. But you could. I mean, you could say, hey, I'm really curious about that. What are some of these things?
Right.
That again is going to get my blood pressure down, right? And then you go to your pivot, but then it's a pivot, which is only, hey, I've been thinking about this myself. Can I share my views? Constance and then Karen. Oh, Constance has left the room. Constance has left the building. Karen, we'll go to you.
Carl, you just heard from Constance.
Oh,
she had
sorry.
already spoken.
Well, no wonder she left the room. Karen.
I'm a little bit concerned after we've spoken about this that you may not be accessing the same kind of information that I am. And you might not be getting the full picture of what's happening. And at that point, I might ask them if they would feel comfortable sharing where they get their news from and, how do they get informed?
Good.
Well, that is not going to lower my blood pressure. I'm sorry. I understand what you're saying, and it's a valid approach. But for me, speaking personally, my defenses are going to go up. They are, because you're challenging me. You're wrong, basically. You're wrong. You don't have the right sources. And so I would be softer in a pivot than that particular one.
It does concern me, though.
You're going to have plenty of time to talk about that when you're ready to gallop, but we're not ready to gallop. Okay? Let's go on to one more, and then we'll go on to where you can begin to gallop. Okay, Mary?
Yeah, hi. I came up with, I'm so glad you shared your thoughts with me. I have a few that I'd like to share with you, if I may.
That's it.
Yeah. Now, it's beautiful. I think it's beautiful, especially the way, I'm so glad that you shared. This is going to be all in the tone and the body language, right? Because in one way it can be, I'm so glad you did this. I got a few of my own to share with you, right? That is not going to be the direction we want to go. But I'm so glad you did this. And hey, I've got a few things I'd like to share with you. Can I do that? That's going to glide you right into being ready to offer your perspective. Okay? All right. Moving on. Finally, you get a chance to share your perspective. And there's some key elements about doing this. One is when you do it, use I statements. This is how I see it. This is how I feel. You're not speaking for anyone other than yourself. You're not speaking for the entire Democratic Party or the entire Northwest Suburbs Organizing for All group. You're just speaking for yourself. And when you do that, you can't be wrong, right? I mean, it kind of disarms that kind of thing. How can anyone say, well, you're wrong if this is how you feel? So using I statements versus this is how we feel versus you. You can feel free to name your sources for your views, but this is a little bit tricky because on the one hand, your sources may be different from my sources in terms of credibility, right? So sometimes the sources can be more, if they're more factual, there's some hard data that I got from this report, or this, the government statistics on unemployment, whatever. That's one thing, but sometimes that can be good, sometimes it can be dangerous. So you have to be really careful with the sources. Like what was done with earlier in some of the personalizing of things, if you can personalize your relationship to this issue, that really is helpful. Any kind of personal experience. And it doesn't have to be your own, but it can be, a friend of mine. A friend of mine needed help. She needed food stamps. She needed a helping hand. And it was enough to get her and her kids, through a very difficult time. And then anytime, again, you can find something to agree with the other statement, that's fine too. But the most important parts of this are you're finally having a chance to share a perspective, which is going to be a counter argument. Go ahead and do it, but do it as an I statement and share a story if you can, or share some type of feelings that you have about it if you can. Now, let me give you, are there any questions about that? Because I'm going to ask you to go ahead and write a perspective. And you can see, again, in the participant guide, the things that I just talked about and that were up there on the slide are the things that you might be able to think about. Lori, do you have a question before you go into the breakout on this?
I do. Thank you. So, can you or will you address when someone is angry? Are there kind of any diffusing statements before? It's like we're doing this in a very calm and and friendly atmosphere, but often it's not that.
Yeah. Let me say something about that now, and we can have some wrap-ups of some of these things as well.
Thank you.
If someone is really, really angry, I would still try to diffuse that anger by going through these types of the lap skills. But having said that, if you find that anger is not going away, there's no willingness to even allow a different perspective, to accept the pivot, then it's time to it's not the time to continue that discussion. It's not going to be productive. Hopefully, you'll find even with an angry person, that if you do some of the acknowledgement, even the acknowledgement around, man, I feel how strongly this is to you, how important it is to you. Kind of getting an emotion in to counter the emotion, that'd be helpful, but it may not work, right? And so I think your point of your question, Laura, is really important. It doesn't work all the time, or the time may not be right, and so you've got to make that that judgment. Can we, if there's not a question yet about the actual writing your perspective statement, can we go ahead and just go forward with that, and then we'll take some final questions at the end. So if there's a technical issue of what you're supposed to do, I'm not seeing one. So let's write down a perspective statement, word for word. Take a couple minutes to do it, and then we're going to put you back in your groups and you can share them. And don't worry about doing the entire perspective statement that you want to give. You can write it in outline form, bullet points, or just a couple of first sentences that you would offer, okay? You're finally getting a chance to talk to that conservative that you have been chatting with up to this point about what you feel. Please give it a try. Just a couple of outline points if that's what you want to do. Okay, Abe, want to do breakout rooms, and you'll have 4 minutes in this breakout to share your perspectives.
So, Carl, as I'm listening to you and I'm understanding perfectly how you do this one-on-one program, I've been trying to relate it to these events that I go to where we have a room full of people and kind of controlled hostility. And you know, where you're listening to what somebody's saying, and you're trying to understand what they're saying, but you're trying to formulate your one shot to say back to them for the group to hear.
Yeah.
And I haven't quite found that spot yet. Maybe we'll have a special session of that someday later that said, if there's more than one.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, especially if there's a big group and everyone's throwing their stuff in there. I would think, though, it requires really fast thinking, right? Because you got to listen. You still have to listen. And then I think you've got to do some kind of acknowledgement. It not just to that person, but the whole group is hearing it, right? So
Right.
it's valuable. Then you can't do the pivot because you got a whole group there. You've got to, I think, at that point, go almost maybe combine a pivot with the perspective that you want to put in there. So you can just say, after you listen, acknowledge, and say, I've read this, or I've been thinking about this, and here's what I think, and then you can launch into it. It's worth a try. Let me know how it
Yes.
works.
Well, I just came from the meeting on Tuesday. This is Wednesday, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was kind of funny. We all of us, Constance, who was on here, and a couple of the other ones that we've heard what you said. We've heard what Kara has been saying, and so I can tell we're all trying to think of the best way to approach these things, and it's actually better. The temperature overall has come down. The problem is they haven't heard this. so
Yeah.
so I was thinking, boy, we really need to get you in front of this group, so we get the everybody thinking the same way from both sides.
I would love to get in front of a group like that.
Yeah, we
You
had
know,
I think we may have told you last time we were having differing opinions about whether the local Daily Herald, which is a suburban newspaper, they wanted to come in because they had heard from Constance and a few of us about this. And so they actually came in, and they weren't kicked out. So the reporter and his photographer, they just stayed silent, etc. And what was very interesting is people were more on guard with what they were saying. It lowered the temperature down. And then he wrote a very good article entitled Pancakes.
They're coming back now, by the way.
Okay, yep, Pancakes and Disagreement or something like that. But it was a very good argument, and I think we all are learning a little bit. We're finding little kernels that pop into our heads.
Great.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Sure. Okay. Who would like to be? This is Braver Angels, right? Who would like to be brave enough to share a perspective statement that you wrote? Connie.
Okay, I took the capitalism thing that, the core value that capitalism is a good system. I said, I understand that you feel capitalism is the best system for running a country, but I see people hurting every day. I worked at a homeless shelter and saw people struggling, people working hard. They're working full time and they're still living in a homeless shelter. Last week, we had 55 people in one shelter, 65 people in another shelter, and another 100 in hotel rooms that were provided by, churches and community members, because these people would have frozen to death when it was 10 degrees and colder in Wisconsin. So if capitalism is the best system, I don't think it's working. I don't think it's working.
Okay. So the good thing is the I statements, right? And this is how I feel about it. So that's great. I think the point I would make if I'm the person who you're responding to is stopping the perspective earlier in as you went through it. Because after you said the first two sentences, maybe the first three, you had raised the issue. You don't think it's working, and you had given the example of the one I really got me as someone listening was people working hard, but they're in the homeless shelter and so forth, and almost stop there and see what happens, right? And then because the more you go with your own statement, the more it's kind of a full rebuttal, and it's it's the progressive full quote unquote rant. And that's not what you want. You want to have a dialogue. And my guess is that after that homeless, the people working hard and being in a homeless shelter, most people who had made the conservative rant would be saying, yeah, no, that's not right. And now you've got a platform to go forward with. But it was great. It was a great way to offer your perspective. Dorothy? There you go.
My perspective was about the health, cutting out all the health programs, and I would like to share with you about what my husband did for 30 years. He worked with the federal government and was able to eradicate smallpox in the world, and facilitated the vaccination of children in 22 countries. And all of those programs were eliminated. That's my concern.
Yeah. Personal, really positive, powerful statement of the value that you have. And then again, I think it opens up, well, we don't want to cut that out, or that's really important. Who knows where it goes, but you've set the stage for a good potential conversation. So wonderful. And you've had a chance to make your point, right? That's what the goal is, to be able to make your point back to someone who's, coming into this disagreeing with you. Constance, and then is it Mick? So Constance, then Mick.
Okay. I believe that government can serve an important function in a large, complex nation such as ours. I love the fact that America has expertise that's available to us. For example, and can actually save us money. For example, a friend of mine wanted to start up a small business and wanted to put all her money into the business itself as opposed to hiring lawyers to help set it up and everything. So she called the Small Business Administration, and they provided her with a whole array of support information and materials that enabled her to get her business off and running very quickly and easily without spending a dime on expensive attorney fees. So she was very grateful. And I love that story about what a government can do that helps us save money and do well.
Yeah, perfect. Right. I mean, you have a pushback on the point, but you've illustrated it with a personal story that's powerful. Mick, if you can show your camera.
My camera. No.
Well, again, we know where you stand.
No, I'm a mess right now. But my statement is more what you can do as an individual, not worry about the government, which we're all doing. Is that some time ago I ran into a Native American lady, and she was concerned about the way she'd been treated as an ethnic group, and we have many different ethnic groups here in Colorado. So she was telling me about how, as a child, stores and places had signs up saying no Indians allowed. And I told her I had a very similar experience as a child, that I'm very white, but I'm from Miami. And there were signs there that said no blacks at the water fountains. And I got very upset. And then I told her that in New York in the 40s, there were signs that said no Jews allowed. And we started comparing notes there and just opened up with each other. It was so great that we both left smiling.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a way that you, in that particular scenario, you were able to find a way of finding some common ground and having a conversation. So that worked out. Anyone else? Okay. I think you can see that you finally get a chance to share your perspective, but even with that, you have to be a little bit careful, right? And you guys really were with using the I statements, with making it really conducive to a listener to to actually listen to you, because that's what you want, right? And those were great. So thanks. We're about to finish up, and what we'd like to do is we like to do evaluations of all of our workshops. And so I'm going to ask you if you can do this, to use this QR code, or there in the chat there'll be the link to this evaluation. And if you would open this up and at least begin to fill it out now, that would be great. I'll just give you a minute or two to pull it up. I want to thank some people here. First of all, the Sumner's Foundation is a Dallas-based foundation that gives Braver Angels of Central Texas some funding to do workshops and activities. And so we always want to give a shout out to them. It's particularly useful and important when we do in-person workshops, because it allows us to travel and make copies and so forth. So we're grateful to them. Northwest Suburbs, Organizing for All of Indivisible. Again, thanks so much. When we do about the sixth one of these, I think I'll have that down faster, but I keep trying. Chris Weldy and Vision Forward, thanks for organizing this. The team that we had behind the scenes and in the screens, thank you them all. Abe, especially for doing breakouts. It is not easy to do breakouts with the number of folks that you have and with people coming in and out. So a huge shout out to Abe. Laura for doing all the stuff with the chat and keeping us honest on that. And obviously to Duane for the moderating. I think the final thing we'd like to do is a checkout with you all, and just kind of impressions about the workshop and how you hope to use these skills in the future. And that's it. So I'm going to stop this share. And before you raise your hands, I'll just tell you about a workshop the other day. Actually, it was out in Bastrop, Texas, which is east of Austin. And one of the members of Braver Angels out there, she's very conservative. Her parents are very liberal. And she was talking about having gone to one of these workshops and learned the lap skills. She said she tried it out with her parents because they had not had good conversations. And she said it was beautiful. Now obviously it's a context of a family and a loving parents and a loving daughter. So they had all the incentives in the world to make it work, but they hadn't ever had these kinds of conversations, and it was about politics. And she said at the end of it, we came away both groups feeling really happy about how it went. In contrast, she said she has a sister who she can't talk to. So she's working on that one. But, we take the victories where we can get them. And some of them really are, life-changing to create or to not lose friendships over what's going on in our political atmosphere. So with that, who would like to make any kind of comments about how you might see yourself using some of these skills and also some of those more general questions that you had earlier? Okay, I was afraid we'd worn you out. Constance and then Kathy.
Okay, I'm still unmuted. I came because I and Bill and another person from our group go to a very conservative dominated, MAGA actually dominated current events group every other week. And we have a hard time of it quite often. And last Tuesday was a good example of that. I did, the times I did use some of these techniques, like, explaining, saying in my old, paraphrasing back and that sort of thing. It worked to a certain extent. I think it was not a useless kind of approach. It did have its benefits, but there are some people in the group who are just very, 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 very difficult people, and they go on the attack, and they're very bruising in their approach. In fact, this one man has attacked me personally, just kind of savagely, twice in a row, 2 different occasions. And I just wonder if you would advise I just not even try to deal with this person. He often, he comes after me quite frequently, but or what would you advise?
Well, this is probably getting way above my pay grade, but that's never stopped me before. I think if you're trying to do something one-on-one with that person, if you're in a group, kind of it's the least common denominator, maybe it's the worst common denominator. You're trying to, you're playing to your own group. And so I think that he sounds like he's doing that. It may be that he's just, you can't have a productive conversation with him if he's just, that kind of personality. But if you were to try, I would see if you could, see if he would be willing to talk to you one-on-one.
Okay.
Maybe on Zoom.
Yeah, on Zoom.
Okay, Kathy.
I thought tonight was very valuable for me because I've been doing reading about this and I've gone to other workshops. But Carl, just the way you broke it down into, first we listen and then we acknowledge, and to really understand what that means and not to go further, like not to start in with, what you really want to say to this guy, but to just, as you're saying, canter. I think that was very good for me. Not that I've ridden horses a lot, but I do understand what you're saying. Kind of hold the reins, kind of keep it back a little bit, but acknowledge, keep the conversation going, and keep a respectful way. So that was good for me because I haven't broken it down like that before. So I think I can handle things a little better. I don't do well with men that are very hard, and I get very intimidated, and I know I have a lot to say, but I just kind of shrivel up, and I'm sad about that. I went to an all-girls Catholic high school. I'm a nice Catholic girl, and it's like, oh man, some of these guys just, I feel like I'm just beaten up on the head, and I feel bad about it because I do know things, but it's
Yeah.
like I can't even get my words together with them. So,
So maybe this will give you a framework to get the
right.
words, together and keep trying at it. I will say this, it's hard. I've done a number of these workshops. The one that just strikes me is we did a whole workshop on depolarizing within and using the lap skills and go through this. And after the workshop, I just spent like 3 hours in this thing. This person comes up to me and starts talking about an issue and being, more on the other side of the issue than I am, or at least I wanted to push back. Every single one of the skills went out of my mind. I immediately started with the counter arguments, and so I just practice with it a little bit, with someone in your family or a friend that you've got. It's because I think after a while it'll come more natural. But also if you do think about it, I mean, I lost my train of thought at that moment, right? If I had just recaptured lap, I think that would have given me enough discipline to go through the process. So, yeah, but thanks for the
So
comment, Kathy.
practice. Yeah, we need
Yeah.
to get this into our brain and into our heart and second
Yeah.
nature almost.
And don't feel like it's going to happen automatically and tomorrow the next conversation is going to go perfectly and from now on it's going to go that way. It's not. But Sandra, then Peter.
Thank you.
And I'll just say for folks who need to leave, we're at our time, so feel free to do that. But we're also here to stay around as well. Sandra.
Like the previous speaker, but not that difficult. I was at a ladies' meeting last night, except for one gentleman who was putting up with us at the League of Women Voters. And we had a new person come in, and she's Latino, but she's a lawyer, I shouldn't say but, and she's a lawyer. And she is, I get it, looking back, very, very, very emotionally involved. This whole situation is so difficult for them to deal with. But she was completely on the attack. And then she found out my husband's the mayor of Elgin. So you tell him this and you tell him that. And she was threatening they're going to lose their award in Elgin for having the best police force in Illinois, and that can be taken away, she said. And I heard from my husband after I got home that she had actually threatened them and said, if somebody dies, I'll put you in jail. I mean, I don't think you can. I think next time I run into her, hopefully I won't, I just probably won't say anything, because somebody that's just on the attack and wants to threaten people, I find that's very, I have no idea how to deal with it.
I think that's right. Personally, I think that's not worth trying. You have to have at least an amount of decorum. I mean, people can be passionate and you can diffuse it, but if they're at that level, it's probably not going to work.
And I think her goal just was to attack. I think that's the only reason she was.
Yeah, maybe in 2 weeks it'll be different or something. But
okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's just not the right time. I'm with you on that. Peter and then Martha. Peter, I think I saw his headphones go off. So Martha.
Oh boy. Oh, I just wanted to, if you don't mind, respond to the woman who felt intimidated by the man with the loud voice.
Sure.
As a good Catholic school girl who only turned feminist, if you pay attention, you'll notice that men tend to dominate conversations, and they feel quite often very entitled to interrupt you in your conversations. And in in a non-confrontational way, one might say, "Excuse me, I was speaking." That may not stop them, but you have made your point, and anybody else who's in on the conversation knows that you have a right to speak and hopefully not be interrupted. I've loved this tonight. It's going to help me so much in talking about a lot of difficult subjects and not just politics.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's not confined to politics. Thanks, Martha. Peter, I think, and then Joyce.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, my wife called me away. I'm back.
Right.
I wanted to thank you, Carl, for especially for your feedback on everybody. It's been helpful to me in really understanding this process and doing it
Appreciate
better.
it. Thank you.
I wanted to say that what I have been planning to use this method for is in canvassing for voters in the next election. Maybe starting with the primary, but certainly for the general election. And ironically, the goal for the first part of that is to ask voters about their concerns. What are their major concerns? And if they have proposed solutions for them too. And then using that information to go back to a wider range of voters to talk to them. And that's where this method will come in handy.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thanks, Peter.
Yeah, thank you.
Joyce, and then Vanita.
Yeah, well, this has been very valuable. Thank you. And yesterday I did a workshop with another group that I guess it's like this is what they do, train people in having difficult conversations. And I'm going to take a series of workshops that they're doing. And for me, it's not so much talking to people who have very different views, but wanting to get help, talk to people who express very similar views, or to get from being upset or frustrated or whatever to getting involved and acting. Because I find when I'm doing something about something, I'm not like people are saying, I'm so depressed, I'm freaking out and everything. But if I can do something, even if it's just my little bit, I don't feel so frustrated or helpless or hopeless. So I'm hoping to have conversations, without saying, you should be doing more, with people, to sort of help them find what they choose to do, or what they see they can do, so they don't feel like just throwing their hands up and saying, oh my God, I'm depressed, this is horrible.
Yeah. Well, I just, as you're saying that, I was thinking about even this process, going through this process with them, but the perspective is the I statements about what you're doing. And right. And not so much to say, and you should do it too, or you should find something else to do. But you could make the point beautifully by saying, I felt the same way you did. And here's what I ended up doing. And almost leaving it at that, right? And then it plants the seed, it makes the point, but it doesn't sort of say what, like you were saying, you don't want to say this, you should be doing this, this, and this, right? Yeah. Vanita, and I think we'll end with Vanita unless someone has some final earth-shattering comment to make. Like, I don't know. Vanita.
Thank you, Carl, and our host and everybody that participated in this wonderful discussion this evening. I'm well aware of many of the tools that were discussed and modeled on our call this evening. And as an attorney, I am wired as a pure advocate. And so this evening's session made me think about a lot of things, including Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Effective People, the importance of active listening, and one of those habits to seek to understand and to be understood. And so I'm planning to begin to build back into my toolkit in this volatile world that we're living in today. These skills in my day-to-day interactions to hopefully build toward and drive more consensus and potentially win-win solutions, back to Steve Covey, in difficult conversations. So thanks, everyone. I really enjoyed this evening.
Thank you, Anita. Chris, over to you.
Yeah, so I get the last word. So again, Carl, Duane, Abe, just another amazing session. This has become a passion project for me. I, like many people, are very concerned about the divisiveness that's caused harm with, friendships and family, etc. So this is one, and that's why I am going to continue to offer these kinds of sessions, because I just think it's so needed as our country works to heal itself. And I think we have a lot of healing to do. I also wanted to say, Carl didn't share, but he has a friend that is that also Norm, right? That co-moderates some of the sessions, and I have since gained a friend similar. So I met someone also through Braver Angels, and every other Sunday we have a Zoom call, and so we're come from different political perspectives, and we have become friends, and we have a lot in common as we're working through the struggles of family relationships and things like that. So anyway, just wanted to say that, and I will also say is I have been to several of these workshops, sometimes 2 or 3 times. So practice, practice, practice is really, really important for it to become second nature. So anyway, on that note, I am going to close it out for the night. We hope to have Carl and his team back for other sessions. And then we have Kara, who's I think also on the call. She has her Monday sessions, what I wish I would have said, that have, similar, but have a little bit of a different approach too. So thanks everyone, and hope to see you in one of our future sessions ahead. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, I am going to close it down. All right, thanks team.
All right, thanks. Abe, are you